Hi, this video will demonstrate how to solve inequalities. The main difference between solving an inequality and an equation is that if you divide or multiply by a negative sign, you must, and I cannot emphasize that enough, reverse the inequality. All right? So let's do a quick example and you'll understand better what I'm talking about. If you have minus 3x less or equal to negative 9, and you divide each side by a negative 3, because your goal here is still the same as it was when you solved an equation. You want to isolate your variable on one side and get your numbers on the other. All right? So in order to isolate my x, I'm going to divide both sides by a negative 3. Here my negative 3's cancel, I'm left with x. Here, 9 divided by a negative 3 gives me a negative 3. But now this is what I'm talking about, okay? Start so you know it refers to this. When I divided by a negative number, negative is the key here, I have to reverse this sign here, okay? So instead of it being less than or equal to, it now becomes greater than or equal to. All right, we do not do this when we multiply and divide by a positive number, only when we multiply and divide by a negative number. Okay, divide by a negative number, reverse the sign. So now I'm ready to write this in interval notation. Okay, what's the smallest value x can take on? Negative 3. What is the largest value x will take on? It's infinity. And now notice I have an equal sign, so I'm going to use the square bracket. And with infinity, I always use an open bracket. Let's move on to the next question. Here, I want to isolate my x, so I have minus 5x plus 7. So I'm going to subtract 7 both sides. I'm left with minus 5x greater than or equal to minus 5. Why didn't I reverse this sign? Well, I subtracted 7. All right, I did not divide or multiply. So in this case, my sign stays as is. All right. So now my last step is to isolate my x by dividing both sides by negative 5. When I divide both sides by negative 5, on this side they cancel, I'm left with x. On this side, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is going to just give me 1. But notice, once again, I've divided by a negative number. When I divide by a negative number, I have to reverse this sign. So now instead of greater than or equal to, it becomes less than or equal to. All right, divided by a negative number. What's the smallest value x can take on is infinity, negative. The largest value x will ever take on is 1. I use an open bracket with that. Because there's an equal sign, I use the square bracket. Now for our last problem. Once again, I may be asked to solve things that require distribution, combining like terms, or other properties, okay? Don't let that throw you off. I'm still going to do everything I would as if I was solving an equation. So I'm going to distribute this 3. 3x minus 6 greater than or equal to minus 5x plus 13. And now my goal is to get all my numbers on one side, all my variables on the other. I'll add 6 both sides. I get 3x greater than or equal to minus 5 plus 19. That's minus 5x. And now to get my variables on the other side, I'll add 5x both sides. So I'm left with 8x is greater than or equal to 19. And for my last step, I'll divide each side by 8 and get that x is greater than or equal to 19 over 8. Why didn't I reverse my sign? Well, I divided by a positive number. I only reverse my sign when I divide and multiply by a negative number. Okay? So please keep that in mind. So now that we've solved this, let's do interval notation. The smallest value x will ever take on is 19 over 8. The largest value is positive infinity. Round bracket with our infinity, square bracket with 19 over 8. So that is the only difference between solving an equation and an inequality. is remembering that when we divide and multiply by a negative, we have to reverse our